Welcome to Signature Required. It is intended for Tennesseans by Tennesseans.
What makes them tick? What lights their fire?
We're pulling forward people that, unless you listen to this interview, you might not know a thing about them. The heart of a Tennessean, the volunteer state, is serve, and we do so largely without self-promotion.
And these are genuine people that get up every day and want to make art, or want to educate the nations, or want to have a heart of love in a way that makes a difference.
Learn from 50 years of experience, take a nugget away, and then go share it with a friend. Deputy Commissioner Andy Holt for the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. Welcome to Signature Required.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you. I'm looking forward to it.
We're really excited to have you. Most people, if they met a Deputy Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of Tennessee, might be able to talk for like 5 seconds about what they think it is that you might do, but who have Carly and I managed to land on our podcast today? What do you do?
So I'm relatively new to this position. Have spent some time at the department, about 4 years at the department, a couple of different roles. But now Landon is this position with Deputy Commissioner as my new title. I'm really an assistant to Commissioner Hatcher, and I help him manage everything from HR to different issues that are going to arise over time, really across the state. So from Mountain City to Memphis, and as we say, from Copper Hill to Tiptonville, there's agriculture in every county and forestry in every county here in the state of Tennessee, which is one of the great things about Tennessee, one of the things that makes us unique. And as a result, different folks within the industry have different needs, different concerns, different wants, different desires. And so I try to help the commissioner manage those and address issues as they arise. And I know that sounds probably like a pretty nebulous description, but from one day to the next, I could be in Chattanooga talking to a group there about agriculture, or next month I'll be in Hong Kong for 7 days promoting Tennessee agriculture and forestry. So
Wow.
One day to the next never looks the same.
Do you wear the hat?
I like that.
Do you wear the hat in Hong Kong too?
So, I've
I'm going to need a photo if
Yeah.
you do. Yeah.
I do. It actually kind of makes me, no matter where I travel, India, I've been in India several times over the last 2 years, and also Vietnam. And every time I go, it's almost kind of like a navigational beacon for the folks that we've built relationships with. When they see me, it's something that they've come to expect. And now I kind of feel like I've worked myself into a box, because if I don't have a hat on, then people are like, hey, who's the fat bald guy over there? But they know who I am with the hat, so it really helps.
It's branding. We're going to call it branding.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, before we move on, I do want to ask, you're traveling the world. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people would assume you would just be traveling our state, maybe end up in D.C. sometime. So what is it about what we do in Tennessee that you're promoting all over the world?
So good question. So I'm gonna give some precursory information and then answer your question. So Tennessee is literally one of the most unique agriculture and wood baskets in the world. From East Tennessee, which is obviously a lot more mountainous, a lot more topography, throughout Middle Tennessee, which has its own, type of geological and topography, characteristics, all the way to West Tennessee. We really kind of, for the 3 stars that are on our flag, have these almost like 3 unique, almost sub-states that combine to make one.
Define wood basket real quick too, because I know what you mean, but people in here, wood basket, they might be thinking something very different than what you're thinking when you say wood basket.
Yeah, so wood basket is kind of what we describe as a forested area.
Yeah.
So kind of like the collective characteristics of a patch of forested area. Mm-hmm. And so we have some pretty unique wood baskets here in the state of Tennessee as a result of that.
A lot of timber potential of all different types.
Tons. Actually, hopefully we get into the details about that. But over half of our state is actually forested. And so that's one of the biggest commodities that we're producing on a daily basis is wood. But because we've got these 3 very unique regions, and we have 3 very unique opportunities for people to produce different types of agricultural commodities, we really are kind of known around the world as a supplier of lots of food products. Also, we're part of what we call the Southern Corn Belt now.
Jack Daniels.
So around the world, when I introduce myself, even to, diplomats from foreign nations, and, they want me to introduce myself, I say, I'm Andy Holt. I'm from the land of Dolly Parton, Jack Daniels, and Elvis Presley. And they instantly know. They know Tennessee. And so as a result of us producing all these different commodities, and because we have this really, really great hardwood potential, people around the world want these products. I think, Spencer, you and I, and Carly, I know you said you're, born and bred Tennessee. Probably a lot of people that were like us and grew up here probably thought everybody grew up with these kind of trees around them. And that's just not the case. Around the world, Tennessee hardwood is really sought after. It's in demand. And so that's one of the products amongst food products and amongst livestock and genetics and other things that we can produce here in Tennessee. That's what we're out promoting around the world in all these different countries.
What is it that you're looking for? Let's talk about it for a second. Why is the hardwood from Tennessee unique? Like, you would think as a outsider that doesn't have much involvement in timber, like, what makes it special versus all the other trees that you could chop down?
So around the world, what makes us special is that our silvicultural practices, and silviculture is the practice, kind of like agriculture is growing crops and livestock. So silviculture is the practice of growing trees. And our silvicultural practices here in Tennessee are the most sustainable that you'll find anywhere in the world. And so that in and of itself is attractive to a certain group, certain demographic of buyers. They want to make sure that we're not going through taking a rainforest and depleting that rainforest, taking those fiber resources that would be ascertained through that process and selling that into a market as an unsustainable forestry product. So what we know is that any tree that's cut here in Tennessee has been managed in a silviculturally acceptable practice because, most importantly, it's native. So you look at the topography of our state, there's a lot of places across the state right now where you're not going to cut the trees down and say plant wheat and then come back behind that and graze cattle. The topography limits that. The potential of the ground would limit that. But on a craggy, north-facing slope that's on a 40-degree, that's covered with limestone, you can produce one of the best white oak trees in the world. And that's what we have the habit of doing here in Tennessee. And the quality of that hardwood, the sustainability of that hardwood, the fact that we have an infrastructure of folks that can carefully cut that tree down, take it and haul it to a mill. That mill can manufacture that log into lumber and other byproduct material, and then have that ready to send out around the world. That makes us unique, and that's something that is a real core competency for us here in Tennessee.
So when it's spring and my allergies are killing me, I should actually rejoice because it means that our trees are flowering, and that's what makes Tennessee so special, right?
Yeah, and all that yellow dust that's all over your car, just think like, hey, you know what? That is profit for somebody.
It is gold dust.
It's gold dust.
It is
That's
the
a good
yellow
way to
brick
describe.
road.
Yes.
We are on our way to, okay.
There
I
you
got
go.
it. All right, I will reframe my Claritin usage.
We've gotten some real vocabulary so far
I'm gonna
today,
say,
Carly. I'm telling you.
I feel like our design team needs to put together like a cheat sheet of all of the words.
Silvicultural, wood basket.
Wood basket's my favorite, though.
Well, we can automatically see that your knowledge and education and sophistication related to Tennessee agriculture, like you've wowed us already in just like 5 minutes worth of hearing it. So help us learn a little bit about you. You're Deputy Commissioner Andy Holt, but who's Andy outside of your role? How did you get to the place that you are?
Well, yeah, that's a big question. So I'll start kind of from the beginning, and hopefully this will be something that encourages people who are listening, especially if you have young people that are listening, or if you have folks that are saying, man, I'd really like to get into agriculture, but like I'm not really from that kind of group. You know, my parents don't farm, or I don't know enough about agriculture to feel like I can be a participant. So actually grew up in a completely non-agricultural family. And I grew up really, to be honest, in a ghetto in Knoxville. So I grew up in a poverty-stricken home. Yeah. And until I was about 10 years old, not a lot of real emphasis on education, not a lot of plenty of support. Don't get me wrong. I had great parents, and to this day, they're still some of the greatest people that I've ever met in my entire life. But as a kid, I just did not grow up on the trajectory to be sitting here with you all talking about this topic.
Yeah.
And I hope that's an encouragement for anybody, because, people can learn new skills and do new things and charter a path for themselves that maybe others would not have expected. And I think I'm living proof of that. And so, early on, I was a struggling reader in elementary school. I had a teacher that was just literally a godsend, who forced me to kind of learn how to read instead of going to recess, which is a good trade-off. I didn't think it was at the time. So we were reading books about agriculture, and I didn't even know it at the time, but I was like being drawn in, as I think really a lot of kids are drawn into the idea of like living on a farm and being around animals. For some kids, some people, animals are the draw to agriculture. For some people, and I've got a daughter, my oldest daughter, Josie, 16 years old, the draw for her is plants. I mean, she just loves to watch plants grow and to learn more about why plants grow, why they succeed, why they thrive. And so I just remember reading through some of those books and then making my mind up, I think that's what I want to do for a living. Sometimes we box ourselves into this ideology that, you're not equipped for that. You can't do that. And sometimes we're told that enough that we start to believe it ourselves. But I have forever, always, and I hope I never lose this, always sort of had my own intentions in life and kind of danced to my own music or whatever, and just made this, I can remember, very affirmative decision. And I just thought, well, I'm going to learn how to farm, and I'm going to live on a farm, and I'm going to have a farm one day.
Wow.
And so happy to report that, that dream came true, and it can come true for others. And whether that's, whether you're an elementary school kid that's making that decision, or maybe you're somebody that's moving from another state who's landing in Tennessee, and for the first time, you've kind of looked around and said like, wow, this ag thing is really something that I really like. And so, fast forward now, my wife and I, Ellie, we were college sweethearts. She was from West Tennessee. I was obviously from East Tennessee, growing up in Knoxville, and we got hitched after college. I won't tell you how much of a struggle that was for me, because I had a managerial accounting class that I didn't think I was going to pass, but I knew I got a job lined up on this. I've got a marriage lined up on this. I have to get through.
You've made it.
I made it. Thankfully, we got a curve in that class, and I was good. Yeah.
Well, so you did your undergrad in agriculture.
Correct.
Right, at UT
Yep.
Knoxville. And then you went on and got an MBA also?
Correct, at UT Martin. So once we moved to West Tennessee, which is again where Ellie was from, and her parents farmed in West Tennessee. Of course, West Tennessee is a big row crop area. Her parents had cattle and had row crops and everything, and so that's where I naturally wanted to be anyway. But it was just a great place. But I found a job there. I started working for Farm Credit Services. So I was in the ag lending industry early on. And so we had, all these great things lined up. And then while I was there, I felt like this draw to sort of continue my education and actually have intentions to start a PhD this fall with UT Knoxville with the ALEC program, which is ag leadership. So, yeah. But we have 7 kids from 5 to 16, and we're bookended with girls. I think every man kind of has that man, I really want to have a boy. And then you have a girl and you realize wow, maybe I just need all girls because they're amazing.
It's just you come home and it's a daddy explosion.
Yeah.
And it's just whatever's happened that day, it just falls away pretty quickly, because in their eyes, it's I want to be half the person that they think that I am, that I look into those eyes. And man, it's really something.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that's one of the draws for me. I think that was so positive about agriculture is these are family-oriented businesses. So 98% of all farming operations in the state of Tennessee, logging operations, silvicultural operations, they're just built around family. That's the nuclear element of every one of these businesses. And I think that's something that's really attractive to me as well.
That was exactly where I was going with my next question. Is we've had the opportunity to interview a number of people from the agricultural industry, but they're always 5th generation, 7th generation, 12th generation, and just stuff that
kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's so intimidating. It's awe-inspiring. It's uniquely American. It is historically Tennessean, all things that you love. And someone in agriculture has to learn to communicate agriculture to someone that's starting at the beginning. So how did that work for you? Because it sounds like that you had, at least for a moment, some intimidation of what it would be like to really go all into that ag space. How was that for you? And what was a moment? Was it a mentor? Was it an education? How did you break into it?
Great question. And I think you are so right. I think sometimes as industry professionals, no matter what that industry is, and we do, we want to come across professionally. We want to come across with this image of like, hey, I kind of know what I'm doing. So, in the process of learning, though, kind of like what you're talking about, for me, and this might be a surprise, but it was 4-H. So as this, second, third grade kid learning about this new career opportunity, this new path in life that seems so attractive, animals and plants and tractors and all the cool stuff that I literally get to live out every day now as an adult kid. I'll be honest, the self-confidence skills that I think kids are so in need of right now was really furnished to me through my relationship with 4-H. Later, that transitioned to FFA.
Yeah, so for 4-H, there's a lot of people listening that won't know what that means.
Yep.
So help understand what it was, what it is today, and just how they might learn more about it.
So 4-H, which I actually was representing 4-H today with my lapel pin,
Nice.
is it's a club for kids that is focused on, and Tennessee has the largest 4-H club in the United States, actually. It is a youth leadership development agency. It's like a group that really teaches kids about leadership, citizenship. They have a pledge that talks about their hands and their health and their heart. And it just really, to me, it kind of embodies American greatness, kind of like as a club for kids. And, when I guess it would have been third or fourth grade, my parents were able to make a transition. We were able to move from this inner city, urban, pretty poverty-stricken environment. We were able to move to what I thought as a kid was the country. Well, it was just the county. It was just John Sevier Highway in Knox County.
It's 20 minutes out of town.
Yeah, but to me, it was just like, oh man, I'm living in the ruralest of rural America, because we didn't have a house sitting right beside us. Yeah. And it was there that I got to have some chickens. I started with the Chick Chain Project, which my kids still participate in right now. You familiar with Chick Chain?
No, you got to give us Chick Chain.
You're going to have to identify all the things.
So Chick Chain was the opportunity for students to learn how to raise poultry. And this is, again, we have to remember to view 4-H through this 100+ year history of, through the Depression and through the recovery from the Depression, these home skills that were necessary. So, I learned how to bake biscuits when I was in 4-H, still use the same recipe, still compete with my brother-in-law on who has the best biscuits. And it's
Did
me.
you bring any today?
I was going to say, can I have some?
Well, and we learned to can, but we learned how to raise livestock. And of course, one of the easiest things to learn how to raise is poultry. And so you get these day-old chicks. We still deliver chicks in the mail, but part of the deal is that you get these chicks, but you raise them, and then you actually take them back to a competition amongst your peers to see who raised the best chickens. And so you do that based on their ability to lay eggs, the formation of these birds, how well you fed them, how well you cared for them. And for me, that was the first tangible wow, I have my own birds. They're dependent on me.
Did you say
great.
chicks in the mail?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they mail them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does it arrive?
So you get this little box, and it's got these little vents poked in it or whatever else. And
The kindergarten at our kids' school gets them every spring.
Yeah.
And they teach the kids, Yeah,
so poultry by mail. It's a whole thing with the mail, with the USPS. So
That is amazing.
But that for me was the kickoff. Then it went to sheep. Then it went to actually, by that time I was getting into high school, and I also became a part of FFA, which is Future Farmers of America, which is a little bit more probably focused on high school. And then, through that process, and I gained confidence. I think that's what think that's what a lot of kids need early on. And maybe we don't talk about it enough, is that kids just need to do something where they can get a win in life, you know?
Yeah.
And for some, that's going to be sports. For me, it was a combination of some sports. I played a few sports. I didn't get that much fulfillment out of it. But 4-H, FFA, that was where I really felt fulfilled. And it emboldened me to take another step. Maybe we can talk about that at some point. But I like left and went to Wyoming and worked as a cowboy, and that was kind of like the real epitome to me of like, I've like fulfilled what I wanted to, like starting out in elementary school. That was really great.
One thing you said about 4-H that I think we should really highlight is the public speaking component. And if you get to know my husband any better, you'll know that I have the privilege of being married to a super debate nerd.
That's great.
Just the greatest part about him is he did speech and debate and then taught speech and debate, all of the things. And it's served him still to today, and chose that over sports because of the future impact. Can you talk a little bit about 4-H and how it gives kids opportunities to develop speaking skills? Because that's near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
So we had prepared speaking, and then we also had extemporaneous speaking. And for me, the extemporaneous was more of a challenge and a little bit more fun.
Sure.
You know, you're just given this topic, and then you're just told, all right, tell us what you know about it. And, you know, it was a really good opportunity for me to, again, sort of challenge myself. Obviously, speaking is something that I enjoy doing, I like doing, and I feel like that kind of kickoff there early on sort of gave me the skills that were necessary to continue to gain opportunities to now do this great thing, get to sit down and talk to you all and share more about my love, my passion for ag and forestry, because again, I want to attract people into this industry. And the best way that we can do that is by effectively communicating. And I appreciate you all hosting me here so that we can communicate more about this.
Well, I can't let the cowboy in Wyoming go. So now we're going to have to really go into that story, because I want to know, were you casted for Yellowstone or considered for casting? You know, did you go to the Quad 6 Ranch? Like, tell me through what that was like out there.
Well, it was, you know, I don't watch Yellowstone. I don't have enough time in life.
Oh, man.
But I did catch some one time on an international flight, and there were some things there that were just, you know, the Western lifestyle is just different than what we live. You know, the landscape and the, you know, just a lot of things are different. But for me, and I don't want to say that I like, you know, lied to anybody, but I probably gave myself a little more credit than I should have on my knowledge of livestock and horses and cattle. And but once I got there, again, I worked for some really great people who really took the time to help me learn, and I was an asset to them as well. But I worked on 2 different ranches over there and went back for off and on for 3 years, in essence, between high school and college. But I went my first year between junior and senior year of high school, and that was my first kind of introductory trip to Wyoming, and it was great. It was my first chance to be out on my own. It also helped me realize that my mom, who was just, again, she's been the greatest, you know, influence in my life in many ways, but she was terrible to me. She never taught me any life skills. And so I got there, and I had taken some Kool-Aid with me, some purple Kool-Aid. And I remember I went to Walmart and I got my own like pitcher, and I put the water in there, and I put that packet of you know, grape Kool-Aid in there, mixed it up, and I drank it, and I was like, what? My mom's Kool-Aid is
gone horribly
way
wrong.
better.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you had to put sugar in it. And I didn't know how to cook anything. I didn't know how to wash clothes. I didn't know how to make a bed. And so I've also told myself that my kids will never leave the house, boys, girls, everybody, equal opportunity. We're all going to know how to cook. We're all going to know how to clean. We're all going to know how to process a chicken. We're all going to know how to process a hog. We're all going to know how to change a tire, you know, do all these different things. That was one thing that I realized while I was there, is that my mom had done so much for me, that life skills are necessary, especially when you're off on your own as a 17-year-old for the first time. So
I love what you're saying there, because I do think it's really hard in our generation of parenting is you have all the Pinterest parties and you have all the moms that are like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And you can fall prey to wanting to do everything
Yes.
for all your kids and to make their life easy. And I think what no one tells you is that when they have a hard day, it comes back at you. So sometimes
yeah.
it's easier to make the path easier for them because it's easier for you.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to have a hard day alongside of them as they're learning those skills. And they're perhaps a little grumpy with me. Never with daddy. Of course not with daddy. But
Yeah, hero of the house.
Hero, yeah. But with mama, but I think it serves them long term. So I love
agree.
that you're saying that.
I agree. But that experience was certainly influential for me, and mostly for this reason. I learned a lot about horsemanship. I learned a lot about cattle, and those were all great things. But while I was there, I also, and this is the part that I'll never forget from being in Wyoming, is it was the first time I realized that bad policy will have an impact on humans and on their life and on their livelihood and on their ability to make a living on their own property. And what was already probably forged in me a very independent spirit and a very sort of, again, this is as a person who works for a government agency, but skeptical of government. I think there always needs to be a healthy level of skepticism, always needs to be a healthy balance of us being mindful that bad policy can have a really bad impact on people. And I was able to see that there. I won't go into the details, but the federal government's Bureau of Land Management in the area of Wyoming where I was at was pretty intense. And they, the ranchers that I work for suffered the consequences of what I think is pretty poor land management practices in that area. And I was able to talk to the rancher that I worked for and gain a better understanding of how if some relatively small, minor policy changes were instituted, how much it would benefit him and the ranch that we worked on. And so that's probably the most important thing that I took back with me from Wyoming.
One of the things that I love in your story in Wyoming is that there was a degree of fake it till you make it. You had to go out there and learn new stuff and kind of probably get embarrassed, get tricked on, all that stuff was happening.
Yeah.
So one of the other parts to move your career forward is you were elected to the House and had the chance to be a legislator. So how much faking it till you making it was it there when you got and showed up there? It's like, okay, I've come a long way from East Tennessee to be here as a legislator.
Oh, wow. I mean, we don't have enough time.
You may not want to answer that question.
So the, just that whole fake it till you make it is very true. And again, I would encourage everybody to force yourself into a situation where you have to do that because I think it kind of forces you to make the best of that situation. So for me, so I was 28 years old. I had no real disposable income to really put toward an elected campaign. But I had something that I felt like I needed to do. I felt like, honestly, it was the Lord's calling on my life. There's a lot more backstory to that. And if I had known then what I know now about politics, I would have been far too scared to have ever run. Because had I lost that race, my life would have really turned out differently. And I don't mean for that to sound weird or morbid or anything, but it would have. And I didn't know. It was the innocence of youthful inexperience that led me to, and my wife and I were actually talking about this last night, and I said something to her. I said, can you believe I actually got elected that first time? And she said, yeah, I can, because it was the Lord's will. Yeah. And that is something that it's a non-negotiable. That's the truth. But it was a surprise to me. And that said, it put me in a position to run for 5 terms as state representative. I look back on that time, and there's things that, because I didn't have anybody to tell me, hey, this is, you're in this position now. This is how you should treat this office. These are the things that you should do. Again, I didn't come from an agricultural family, but I also did not come from a political family at all. Yeah. And so I didn't really have anybody to counsel me. There's things I wish I had done differently so bad. I don't regret a lot of things in life, but there are some things that I said, there's some things, some attitudes that I held that I just think, man, if you had just had somebody to tell you, don't do this, it would have made my political career more fulfilling. It would have made it more impactful. And so as a result, I take lots of new, or in many cases, young legislators sort of under my wing and counsel them a lot and say, don't make the mistakes I did. These are some of the mistakes that I made. And here are some things that I did that were very successful and made me successful. And I try to share that with them.
But at that point, in all honesty, could someone have told you? Or did you have to kind of figure it out?
Yeah, thanks for that.
I don't know. The cowboy that went to Wyoming, it sounds to me like maybe you had to learn it that way. I think one of God's greatest gifts he gives us is not telling us the future.
It's true.
Because if we knew, there have been several periods of our entrepreneurial journey, our family journey, that if I knew what was going to happen 6 months ahead, I would not have taken that step. I would have been too afraid. And I'm so grateful. I wouldn't have traded any of those moments that were really bitterly hard, because I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you today and have the conversation we're having. But I don't think I would have had the courage to choose it had I known all the data.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. You're exactly right. My wife says this all the time: recognize a need and meet it.
So then take us into the bridge from the 5 terms in the legislative body to becoming deputy commissioner. What was that like?
Well, I got to back up and just say that Governor Lee is a great governor. He is, in my opinion, the greatest governor currently in office in the United States. And I don't say that and they're like, oh, well, you work for the guy. That's why you're... No, I do, but I will say it's because I know him as a human. I know him as a man, and I have just an inordinate amount of respect for him. I don't know if y'all have read Governor Lee's book. If you have not, I would encourage you to read it. Governor Lee has experienced some, just like we were talking about, some pretty difficult things in life. Mm-hmm. He's also experienced a lot of success in life. He's a successful guy. But he and I struck a relationship up early on when he was running for governor. And it was one of those times where I'll just let you behind the curtain, when you're a member of the General Assembly, everybody wants to talk to you about everything. Mm-hmm. And of course, when the governor races start coming on, everybody wants to talk to you about being governor. Why, they're going to be the best governor. They're going to be the best you've ever seen or heard. And had a friend that was working for Governor Lee's campaign, and he said, you think you could set aside, 15, 30 minutes and meet with this guy, Bill Lee? And I was like, man, I've had this with all the other ones, I'm sure, he loves the Lord. He loves agriculture, he loves business, it's just what everybody loves when they're running for governor. And I took the time to sit down with Governor Lee, and I made the most foolish political decision I've ever made in my entire life. After about 30 minutes of sitting down and talking with him, I stood up and I said, man, I'm with you 100%.
Wow.
What can I do to help you? Can I give you money? Do you want me to endorse you? And I think it scared him, because I was his first legislative endorsement. And here's this guy that's kind of a political lightning rod, do I want his endorsement? Do I not? But from that day forward, we've been friends, and I knew that I could probably assist him better in this type of role than I could have in the General Assembly. And so 2 years after he was elected, I started kind of working my way out of the General Assembly, and then, kind of made it known that I'd love to work for the governor at the Department of Agriculture. And thankfully a job was available, and I was able to get started there, kind of actually, pretty low position, and just had the chance to sort of, work my way up as availabilities came available.
One of the amazing things about Tennessee is we have a lot of people moving here. And it's the whole theme behind why we do this podcast, is to help people learn what makes Tennessee so special, whether they've lived here for generations with their family or whether they're brand new here. And the agriculture statistics are surprising, I think. Mm-hmm. People don't know how to quantify what it really means to our state. So you're the guy sitting in the seat that gets to see it from end to end of the state. So can you just help us learn a little bit about where Tennessee is at, just from a a number of perspective or anything that comes to mind that you would help paint the picture for agriculture in Tennessee?
Yeah, so great question. And one of the things that we always try to do at the department is talk about agriculture and forestry together. So it's hard to separate the two. And functionally, we think they're kind of like two inseparable sisters. I mean, they just, where you find one, a lot of times you find the other. And so when we look at agriculture and forestry together across the state of Tennessee, and this may come as a shock to some folks, but that's the number one industry. Again, when we add ag and forestry together, the largest industry in the state of Tennessee. Wow. And, so you look at the founding of our state in 1796, and on our seal, there's two words, agriculture and commerce. And now 227 years later, whatever the number is, it's the exact same.
Wow.
We're still there. And so, the most updated figures that we've got come from the University of Tennessee's Institute of Agriculture. We look at their sort of annual summary of 2024, 103 billion with a B, $103 billion industry here in the state of Tennessee. And so, when you look at that, you think, wow, so agriculture and forestry is our number one industry in Tennessee. Wonder what our number two industry is. It's actually hospitality and tourism, and it's just over $30 billion. So agriculture is this industry that's so big, it's three times larger than our next largest industry. And, and that's, again, this is something I think is important, is that a lot of folks who are never going to really set foot on a farm, they're never going to pick, they're never going to pick a commodity. They're never going to run a combine or drive a tractor or, process a cow or a calf or anything. But they're going to benefit from those folks who do in manufacturing. So food manufacturing, transportation and logistics, marketing, ag finance. There's so many careers. We talk about all these different careers that we have sort of out in the world. Agriculture has its own unique subset of all of those industries that just specifically represent agriculture and forestry, partially because there's so much nuance, I guess, associated with ag and forestry. But a lot of jobs are dependent on agriculture here in Tennessee, and that's something that we're really proud of.
I think that's really broadening the horizon of what people can do if they want to stay in Tennessee.
Oh, certainly.
And we want our talent to stay.
Yeah, no, that we do. And the thing is not everybody in agriculture looks like me and wears a cowboy hat. So let's be real clear.
I kind of wish they all did. Let's be honest.
I don't know.
I wish I had my hat.
But it's a career opportunity for any age. It's a career opportunity for any demographic. There's a lot of really technical, scientific careers, and that's something too that when we talk about the integration of technology into agriculture, sometimes it's viewed with a little bit of skepticism or concern or fear, and I completely understand that. And I think that's why we in agriculture have to be careful about how we position ourselves, what technologies we include, what technologies we are kind of inviting in, because at the end of the day, we're still touching people at least 3 times a day and a few snacks in between, which is more of a touch on most humans than any other industry is ever going to have.
Yeah, we've had some real fun on this podcast talking about technology coming in ag, hatcher dairy, like the cows wearing like basically Apple watches that monitor and regulate. You can tell when they're sick. You can tell the last time that X, Y, and Z has happened. Yep. And I can appreciate that anytime technology comes along, it's scary, it's expensive. Just saying, how does this fit into the future? Maybe just one last piece. When we think about some of the industries that our country knows are booming, we think about artificial intelligence and computer science, and the ability to participate in those industries requires a certain set of skills that are usually related to some type of computer programming, physics. There's a pretty narrow range of saying, if you want to participate in this part of the economy going forward, specialize in these things. Mm-hmm. Is there something in agriculture that, as you look 5 years, 10 years into the future, that you would coach someone to say, maybe I'm hearing some about the science side, so maybe you would say chemistry, but maybe it would be something different. Is there something that you would say, go this direction if you want to be a real part of the future of agriculture in Tennessee?
Well, just like that bell-shaped curve that's present in almost every industry and almost any group of folks who are going to adopt new technology, agriculture has the same bell-shaped curve. I think part of the beauty of agriculture is that we are, in my opinion, this kind of steady, stable basis of civil society, no matter where you're at, whether it's America or whether it's Nigeria.
Everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat.
Yeah.
If you've got folks that are also on that kind of slower lifestyle, as my wife would describe, that she wants to adopt for her and for our family, is that the absence of that new technology is also an option in agriculture. And so whether you're this cutting edge person and you want to say, I want to adapt, I want to be the pioneer in adapting this AI technology to the selection of fully matured fruits through the use of robotic technology. Okay, guess what? That's an option in agriculture.
Yeah.
But then there's also this adoption and this mentality. And I think the market's big enough in agriculture where you say, you know what? We're going to be a completely organic operation, and we're going to have the complete absence of all of these new technologies, and we're going to do everything by hand. And guess what? There are places in the world that are dying to kind of retrieve those types of production as well. So again, not to thwart your question, but to say, no matter what your level of technological adaptation is, there's a place for you in agriculture.
All right. So how we like to conclude every one of our podcasts is I'm going to read you 3 short fill-in-the-blank sentences.
Okay.
Here we go. A personal lesson I've learned from my own farming experience is blank.
Okay. A lesson I've learned from my own personal farming experience is that agriculture is the most fulfilling career option that any person can choose for themselves and for their family.
That's a great one right out of the gate.
Okay.
That's good.
We promise he hasn't seen these before.
I know. Yeah, that's right. Here's number 2. One of the most exciting developments in Tennessee agriculture right now is blank.
One of the most exciting developments in Tennessee agriculture right now is the emergence of both domestic and international markets for products that we're commonly and routinely producing here in the state of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. I really learned that today. The international role that you play, I had no clue about. That's amazing.
Well, the market that I look to so often, and we could have a long conversation here about the BRICS nations and why it's important for the United States to really pursue India, but India is a great trading partner with the United States. There's so much capacity to continue trading with them, and they're going to add a 300 million person increase in their middle class over the next 10 years, and I fully believe that, having been there. And that's a great market for us to get a hold of.
If you look at the demographic curve of India, it is insanely young. Yeah, like most people are used to seeing, if they've seen any of those charts, like we know that Japan is the opposite end of the spectrum, insanely old, and has a dying population if they don't figure out.
And China is continuing to trend that direction.
You're exactly right.
Yes.
China is not nearly as young as what people might expect if they had to rank it. Okay, here's number 3. Looking ahead, I hope to see Tennessee agriculture blank.
Looking ahead, I hope to see Tennessee agriculture remain the number 1 industry in the state of Tennessee and to continue to produce at this abundant level where we can be participants in the production of food and fiber and fuel at this like insanely affordable, safe, abundant level, because we have certainly created a mechanism here in Tennessee to feed and fuel not only ourselves, but to be a participant in feeding and fueling the world as a result of what we're doing here.
Deputy Commissioner Andy Holt, thank you for being with us today. This was a real treat. Learned a ton. Tennessee agriculture is in good hands, and I really appreciate the role that you're playing in this incredibly important part of our economy.
Well, thank you all for letting me be here today. It was a treat for me as well.
Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner Andy Holt, we learned a lot of vocab. We learned about chicks in the mail. We learned about a lot of things.
You learned about chicks in the mail. That is the one thing I happen to have known. But yeah, I feel like we need almost like an index of all of the terms because, I don't know, I sometimes wonder how many Vandy degrees does it take to sit across from an ag commissioner, but that was a lot of data, but it was so fun talking to him. He made it so approachable and so fun and told great stories.
It's something consistent that we see amongst our best guests is that they have mastery level information in a topic area, but then are able to explain that to someone that knows very little or nothing about the space that they come from. And that is a trademark of, first, a giftedness, being able to translate from one to another isn't easy, but it also speaks to someone's understanding of the topic. Einstein famously says that if you can't explain something to a 5-year-old, you don't yet understand it well enough yourself. And I love that. And I think Deputy Commissioner Andy Holt absolutely understands it well enough to explain it to a 5-year-old because he does.
I was going to say, I think he had his own 5-year-old 7 different times. And so I also liked how he touched on his faith in a really approachable way. You could tell he is a man of deep faith, but he's not afraid to be vulnerable and be like, hey, I've messed some stuff up and I'm still figuring out along the way. Because I think about that in my role a lot is in the church, how often we use these big words and how people can get really turned off by that. But you know what? If I can't answer why my son is in the backseat putting a Happy Meal in his mouth, asking me these deep questions, and every parent knows what I'm talking about. They ask you about life and death and heaven and hell and everything in between while eating a Happy Meal nugget. If you can't explain it to your kid, then you don't know it well enough.
I think it's also great to see his trajectory coming from a poverty-stricken household in urban Knoxville to Wyoming, to the state legislature, undergraduate degree, a master's degree, about to start PhD. I mean, that really is what Tennessee is all about, is that Tennessee, like every other state, has intense poverty. But Tennessee, unlike a lot of other states, also has intense mobility. And for the ability for people that want it, that really will do what it takes to pursue it, can find a pathway out.
Well, and he had all of those markers, right? He had a teacher that believed in him, right? He wasn't afraid to take risk and to do things that were hard, to fake it till you make it, right? He showed that he had that grit. And I also think something that's really cool and unique about him is he's fully educated in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
His high school, his undergrad, his graduate degree, he's found the programs he needed to be successful here. And as mom of 4 kids, I left my home state, and I would love our kids to want to stay in their home state. I would love for them to want to be and make Tennessee even more successful than it already is with their futures. And so seeing that that was possible for him, I think is a really great thing for parents to see.